Hello you guys, it is Kaylee here, and it is time for another travel and crime. That sounded better in my head. I thought it would sound really cool coming out. It didn't. But anyways, it is Kaylee here with Embrace the Adventure, and in this series I cover true crime cases or hauntings that happen where we are RVing at the time. And since we are a family of nomads, there's never a shortage of cases or hauntings to cover. So in today's case, this is crazy. It is wild. You have to stay tuned till the end to see how it ties in with Galveston, Texas, which is where we're RVing at the time. That's why it fits in the series, because these cases didn't happen here, but it does connect. So it's a whole thing. So we're going to get into all of that. But today we're talking about the murder of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington. So these are very high profile cases. They were national news, and I had just forgotten about them. So when we are actually leaving Galveston Island this week, so I did want to cover one more true crime case, and as I was going through and looking for cases to cover, this one popped up, and I was like, oh, I totally forgot about this one, and it is a wild ride. But I do want to give you some insight, some background on Jesse Matthew, just so you can kind of have that in the back of your mind as we go forward in this whole string of events. So Jesse Matthew grew up in a lower income family. His father was not around very often, and when he was, he would often take Jesse with him as he cheated on his wife, Jesse's mom. So not a good father figure, didn't grow up in the best environment, not a very happy story there. But here's the weird thing, and this really caught my attention because it's so opposite of who Jesse Matthew turned out to be, like, behind closed doors. And this terrifies me because people can hide in plain sight and you just don't know who you're talking to. When Jesse Matthew was in school, high school, college, everybody who knew him, I mean, I went through countless documents, interviews, everything. Not one person said they ever caught a bad vibe, they saw a red flag. People who he went to school with described him as being a gentle giant. Actually, there was a fight that broke out in the cafeteria at one point, and Jesse Matthew took a girl who was involved and put her over his shoulder and got her out to safety so she wouldn't get hurt. He wasn't known to be the smartest guy in the room, but he was always funny, happy-go-lucky. I mean, I think we all went to school with somebody like that. I can think of several who I would describe that way. And I mean, if somebody confronted me with information that, you know, somebody I would describe that way committed crimes like we're about to talk about, I would be shocked. And that is exactly what happened to everyone who was friends with him. When these allegations we're about to get into came forward against Jesse Matthew, his friends, his peers were just in utter shock because they could not put two and two together. They couldn't imagine that this guy that they would describe as a gentle giant could commit 2 murders. It didn't make sense. Now, one more piece of information that I do believe is important just to note. So later on during these court proceedings that we will ultimately get to, Jesse Matthew's ex-girlfriend, one of his ex-girlfriends, had written into the court, and in a letter she did state that as Jesse Matthew was growing up alongside witnessing his father cheat on his mother, that he actually was sexually abused 3 separate times, and she didn't go into detail about who did it. I'm not sure if Jesse Matthew ever told her a name or names, but I was going through documents and that was something that was highlighted several times, so I did want to give that information to you as well. So now that we've kind of done a skim over of Jesse Matthew, you know, you can kind of hopefully in your brain have a very basic idea of kind of at least who he was in school. So Hannah Elizabeth Graham, she was born on February 25th, 1996. She was an 18-year-old second-year college student at the University of Virginia, and she went missing on September 13th, 2014. So let's talk about this disappearance. So Hannah Graham's friends, they had last heard from her through a text message at around 1:20 a.m. on September 13th, 2014. So this would be the day that she went missing. So this is after she told them she was on her way to a party, but she had gotten lost. But it's very common, especially on a college campus, to, you know, to see students out doing this. I mean, it's a very common thing. So she had also attended another party before disappearing. So there was actually surveillance footage along with witness testimony, and Graham was actually seen at Tempo Restaurant with Jesse Leroy, nicknamed LJ, Matthew Jr. So that is the guy we were talking about at the beginning. That is who she was last seen with. So at this time, he was a 32-year-old man. A witness also said that Matthew was seen in the restaurant holding an arm around Graham. She looked to be intoxicated. So the last witness to see Graham alive says that she was with the man who did not look friendly. And as Graham was standing by a vehicle, and this vehicle was identified to be Matthew's orange 1998 Chrysler Sebring, the witness heard her say, "I am not getting in the car with you." So a witness hears Hannah Graham yell, "I'm not getting in the car with you." She's drunk. The guy who ended up being Jesse Matthew had his arm around her, and it was said to be kind of in a forceful way, like people didn't know if he was like, you know, telling her something, demanding something, but she yelled, you know, "I'm not getting in the car with you." She had refused to get in the car with him. She was not into the advances he was making, you know, she just wanted no part of it. She just wanted to kind of party, hang out with friends. That's it. And he was just kind of pushing himself onto her. So let's go back about a decade. So about a decade earlier, Matthew was actually accused of 2 separate sexual assaults. And mysteriously, he up and left both times from both schools. And remember, he was an athlete. So he played football. I know he wrestled in high school. I'm not sure if he continued wrestling in college, but he did play football. And I mean, normally when you go to school to play a sport, you don't up and leave after a month, you know, and you don't do that several times. So it's just very odd, you know, that here's an allegation and then the person of interest is out of here. You know, it kind of, in my brain, it's like, okay, you can't yell, "I did it," more than that. You know, it's just, even though this was super suspicious and super weird, and it was kind of, you know, everybody's opinion who was looking into things that he had done it, there was never a criminal case brought against him in either of these sexual assaults. And also these two, at the 2 separate schools, these 2 sexual assault claims, they were within 11 months of each other. So he was not wasting any time. So let's go back, and on September 19th of that same year, a few days after Hannah Graham went missing, the local police identified a man described as the person of interest, and this was Jesse Matthew, who they saw on that surveillance camera leaving the bar with Graham. So the police did conclude that Graham may have gotten into the car with him. But as I stated earlier, a witness had heard Hannah Graham say, "I'm not getting in the car with you." So that's an obvious, you know, obviously she wouldn't have gotten in there willingly. So, you know, according to surveillance, it was unclear whether she did or did not get in the car with him. But if she did, it was not willingly. Okay, so we've kind of gone through, you know, what happened to Hannah up until that moment where she said, you know, "I'm not getting in the car with you." So she was intoxicated. She was going to a couple of house parties, being a normal 18-year-old girl. But earlier in that night, Jesse Matthew was making so many unwanted sexual advances. Various women. There was an account from 2 women who say that he came up behind them and just lifted them both up by their butts. He was like trying to hold hands with girls, trying to grab on them. I mean, just getting rejected left and right, just making advances all over the place that were completely unwanted. So I am not sure if he was intoxicated or not. I'm assuming so, since he's going from bar to bar. There was actually a point in this night too, with Hannah. So he had approached her and, you know, made advances before, you know, following her and whatever. So while they're still at the bar, there's actually a point where Hannah was said to have sat on her hands so he could not touch them. I mean, that's how uncomfortable this girl was. So Jesse Matthew was just not stopping. So ultimately, you know, after seeing this surveillance footage and getting these witness statements and finding out that Hannah Graham was last seen with Jesse Matthew, they got a warrant to do a search on Jesse Matthew's car, and they found DNA evidence connecting him to Hannah Graham. So they also say that Jesse Matthews' car was seen between 6:30 and 7:30 in a really rural area, and that ended up being where Hannah Graham's remains would be found. Found with Hannah Graham's remains was the crop top she was last seen wearing, and it was turned inside out and unzipped as well. And her jeans were found with holes in them that were not there previously. A medical examiner ruled her death as being homicidal violence. She said there was not significant damage to the skull, so she was likely suffocated or strangled, but she was sexually assaulted. Yeah, it was just horrible. Along with those injuries, she did also suffer 2 nasal fractures that the medical examiner said most likely happened at the time of death or very close to it. So the people who knew Matthew pretty well and spent time with him said that the days following Hannah's disappearance, he was acting super weird. He actually told somebody close to him that he was not okay. He was very reserved, would not answer phone calls, was just acting very off according to those closest to him. Hannah Graham's murder happened in 2014. So let's actually go back to 2009, and this is why. Morgan Harrington of Roanoke, Virginia. She was born on July 24th, 1989. She was a 20-year-old Virginia Tech student who disappeared from the John Paul Jones Arena while attending a Metallica concert at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. So she actually disappeared on October 17th, 2009. So Hannah Graham disappeared in 2014. And Morgan Harrington disappeared on October 17th, 2009. So Harrington and 3 friends drove to that John Paul Jones Arena at the University of Virginia, and they were going to this Metallica concert. Harrington had told friends she was going to use the restroom, and she didn't return for quite some time. So they called her cell phone, no big deal. This was at 8:48 p.m. Morgan answered and said she could not get back in because of the 1 entry rule. She said she still wanted her friends to have a good time. She was last seen around 9:30 p.m. hitchhiking. And this was at a nearby bridge. It was just, she wasn't allowed back in because of the no entry, and she wanted her friends to still have a good time. So she just decided to hitchhike back. So Morgan Harrington's purse, and this had her ID, her cell phone. The batteries were removed though. This was discovered in the RV lot at the University of Virginia's athletic field. So this was after her disappearance. And then her remains were ultimately discovered by a farmer on January 26, 2010. So that would be about 10 miles from the arena she went missing from. The investigators did not release information about her death, but her parents did actually confirm that it had been very violent and the bones were broken. So her mother also did confirm that she was sexually assaulted as well, so the same as the other case. Now, in April of 2010, forensic tests confirmed that a Pantera t-shirt, which had been found in November 2009 outside of an apartment building about 1.5 miles from the arena, was indeed the shirt that Harrington had been wearing the night she went missing. Now, along with this, it was also determined that there was a link between Hannah Graham's murder and Morgan Harrington's murder. So along with that, there was an abduction and sexual assault in Fairfax, Virginia that happened in 2005, and because of that original Hannah Graham murder investigation, that DNA was connected to not only Morgan Harrington's case, but also that 2005 attempted abduction and sexual assault in Fairfax. So now there are 3 confirmed cases with the same DNA. It's the same guy, and we know who did it to Hannah Graham. So now police are like, okay, we've got Hannah Graham's murder. We know there's a forensic connection to Morgan Harrington, and now there's a forensic connection to the 2005 attempted abduction and sexual assault in Fairfax, Virginia, and that name of that victim has not been released. But all 3, there's a forensic link. It's the same guy. It's the same guy. Along with these 3 cases that Jesse Matthew is now confirmed and linked to via DNA evidence and forensic links, there were also some very strange abductions, disappearances. People in that area were very suspect that there was a serial killer / serial rapist in that area for a very long time. They were saying for the last 5 years, women, especially, were just going missing kind of left and right. Nobody felt safe. And so I'm not going to go through that timeline because it's all alleged, but I will be posting that in the description box. I want you to go through it and just kind of check it out, because every time a woman would go missing, he would move. Missing, Jesse would move. It's just too, yeah. And a lot of the remains have never been found, so there's no way to, you know, say he did it for sure. But just go through that timeline. I'll post it down below and just kind of let your brain think about it. Of course, it's all alleged, but I think he was caught for 3. I mean, that's what he was caught for. I think there's a lot more that we don't know about Jesse's criminal history. Now let's talk about how all of this connects to Galveston, Texas, where we're RVing right now. So Jesse Matthew actually was apprehended in Galveston. So I'm going to pop a little map up so you can see exactly where he was apprehended. So it's actually all because of one woman who was paying attention. Karen Monk, lifelong Texan. She lived about 50 miles, so about an hour and a half drive with traffic from the beach. So she said that her and her dog Hurley were just taking that beautiful drive to the beach to enjoy some water, some blue skies, some white clouds, and some music. And she said that all was normal. She was just sitting on the beach with Hurley. And in Galveston, you're allowed to take your car onto the beach, like in several areas. And so she said that it took a minute, but she finally realized there was a car like coming from her left. And then she said that the car kind of stopped and a man just kind of peered out at her. And she said it felt like it was happening forever. And he just was peering at her. Just, I feel weird doing this, but like, that's what, oh, that's probably not the face, but like, that's what I think of. I don't know. That's what Jesse Matthew was doing to Karen while she's sitting on the beach with her dog Hurley. And then after a minute, he just kind of drives off. He just drives off. But she said when he drove away, her heart just sank. And so she's calling Crime Stoppers. She's calling everybody she can, and nobody's taking her seriously. And she knows that she just saw Jesse Matthew, who is wanted for murder. It's a big deal. He was on the run. She's like, get over here. There he is. Go get him. Nobody's taking her seriously. So finally she gets the number for the local police department, and they finally come out and they're able to apprehend him. So I mean, if it weren't for her, he could have killed someone else. Do you know what I mean? Like, and he had ended up, like, he was sleeping in a tent on the beach in Galveston. Like, I mean, do you know how many people just walk by every day? He could have got, I'm so thankful for this woman. I am so thankful for Karen. Jesse Matthew in prison. But wait, so he's serving 4 continuous life sentences because he sucks and he did horrible things. So that's good, right? Last update is he was actually moved to a hospital because he has stage 4 colon cancer. So he was in a high security prison and they moved him to a hospital. And this part of the hospital, it's in Richmond, Virginia. It has a very secure sector that he's still under the control or under the supervision or whatever of the corrections department, but he is able to receive care and like chemotherapy, and he's just really sick, so they moved him there. So that's all I could find on that. But you guys, yeah, this is crazy. It's crazy bananas. I'm gonna link everything I used down below, but yeah, he is away. He's away. But this case broke my heart. These girls never got to start their lives, you know, 18 and 20 years old when their lives ended. And that doesn't count all the women that he made these sexual advances towards that were unwanted, or maybe the other people we don't even know about. You know, he was only caught for, you know, the 2 murders and the 1 sexual, the Fairfax case in 2005. So it's like, we just don't know how many women are out there. So I'm just thankful that Karen Monk was on the beach that day and spotted him and got him put behind bars where he deserves to be for the rest of his life. You guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. We'll be going to Arkansas next, so drop any cases or hauntings you want me to cover down below. I absolutely love filming for this series. I have so much fun with it. I just love murder. That's weird, I know, but I love true crime. If you're watching this, you do too, so you get it. We get each other, yeah. So yeah, make sure to take a second and like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.